This is Superior Sports Talk with Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and it starts now.
Back in the lab, Reggie and Luke back at it. Another episode of Superior Sports Talk presented by Locked On Sports Minnesota. What's happening, Reggie? Happy Friday. We made it, man.
It's Friday. Feeling good. Let's get into it.
Yes, sir. Let's go. Got a monster show lined up today. We're talking Warriors, where that team ranks among the NBA's all-time best dynasties. We've also got our very own Locked On Minnesota colleague, Brandon Warne, joining us to talk Twins, which I'm super pumped about. Plus later, it's Flashback Friday, and you're getting another blast from the past. It's all coming up on Superior Sports Talk. But first, save time and money when using Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family-served business serving do-it-yourselfers like Reggie and I for over 20 years. Reliably low prices for every customer. Brake parts, tail lamps, even new carpet for your vehicle. Go to rockauto.com today and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us section so they know we sent you. That's rockauto.com. Well, that's a wrap, folks. The 2021-2022 NBA season is officially in the books. Golden State Warriors finish off the Celtics last night, 103-90, to win their fourth NBA title since 2015. Steph Curry leads the way, 34 points, 7 boards, 7 assists. He's named Finals MVP for the first time in those 4 championships. We'll get into all that in a moment, but first things first, Reggie, I got to ask. Celtics had 23 turnovers last night. You can't expect to win when you play like that against a championship caliber team in Game 6 of the finals. Was this more a case of the Celtics repeatedly shooting themselves in the foot, or Golden State just clearly being the better, more talented team in the end?
No, it's definitely a product of the Celtics just shooting themselves in the foot. I think we've seen in this series even that the Celtics are talented enough to put the Warriors away. It was kind of similar to what we saw last year. I think the Suns were maybe more talented than the Bucks were, but the Bucks had a Giannis, and the Suns just couldn't consistently put down shots. And so Giannis was just like, all right, well, I'll just take over, and, you guys just do something about it. And that was kind of the case this year. Tatum, 13 points. Where did you go, my guy? Like, what's going on? And, they're young, but for some reason or another in the playoffs, the Celtics usually always just kind of choke it away. And this year, it just happened to be in the finals after all that they went through. And look, this will be a good experience for them because, they were finally able to get over the hump in some of the earlier rounds, and they were able to put some really good teams away to get to the finals. And I mean, they looked like the better team a few times in the finals for the 2 games that they did win. And you were just like, oh man, here we go. And it was just weird because it took a Herculean effort from Steph Curry in game 4. And then, an all-around team performance in game 5. And then yesterday, Steph, Draymond, they were excellent, and they went ahead and just put them away. And I think, Boston did shoot themselves in the foot with several turnovers, and you're just like, they're inexplicable. Like, it doesn't even make sense what they're doing. And now they, an experienced team with championship pedigree, you don't make that many mistakes against them because whether or not they're the more talented team or not, you make all those mistakes against them, and they know how to react. They know how to respond. I think it was good, too, to see, them withstand, because Boston got out to a quick lead. The Warriors surged back and took the lead, and then they never gave it back. And it was interesting because the Warriors took a couple punches. There was a couple times where the Celtics got the game within single digits, and you're just like, oh, man, here we go. But a big shot from Steph going to the cup. They didn't settle for those threes. I thought Clay was going to miss so many shots that he was just going to put Boston right back into the game. And I'm like, man, this fourth quarter is going to be interesting. But then you got Steph driving to the bucket. You got Jordan Poole driving to the bucket. Draymond, Wiggins, Like they were impact players yesterday and they did what they had to do to get it done. But if you're the Celtics and if you're the Celtics fan, you just think, man, how did we let this happen? And it's kind of like the Timberwolves in that series against the Grizzlies. Like, you could clearly tell the Timberwolves had the most talent and they were the better team, but you're only the better team when you win. And last night, the Warriors proved that they were the better team.
I got to take a moment, just kind of tip my hat to the Celtics. Again, frustrating end for sure for fans, but the road even to the chip. I mean, KD and Kyrie beat the Nets, beat the reigning champs in Giannis and the Bucks. They beat the number 1 seed in the Heat to cap it all off. If nothing else, they showed their resiliency to bounce back when the chips were down and just kind of punch their way out of seemingly any tough situation and keep proving people wrong. In the end, yes, Warriors win it all. They've won 4 rings since 2015. Who's kidding who? That's a dynasty, right? I mean, Showtime Lakers in the 80s, Jordan Bulls in the 90s winning 6 championships. That's kind of the bar and pedigree everybody likes to set. Do they still need 1 more or even 2, or are they supplanted now among the best teams of all time?
Yeah, I mean, you put them right up there. You put them up there with the Bulls, the Spurs, like LeBron. I think it's just so funny, man, because we and I blame kind of like the sports debate culture on this. We just always like have this knack of like the championship is not even like the body ain't even cold on the championship. And all of a sudden we're like trying to conceptualize like where this team ranks all time and all that, instead of just really just like taking this as it is, like
enjoy
putting
the
it
moment
to
for a second.
putting it
Can we please?
into perspective as it is. Like this, which is funny because of how things shook out, but like Iguodala ends up going to a couple teams and then finding his way back to the Warriors for another championship. But this core of Steph, Clay, Draymond, and Iguodala all have 4 rings together. And that part is amazing because they are the modern day like in the age of LeBron. The Spurs were kind of like teetering. They lost Kawhi, and that really kind of spelled the end for their dominance. But then you had LeBron with the Heat, with the Cavs, with the Lakers, and he's winning rings with all these teams. And then all of a sudden, this team from Golden State just sneaks through here and just snatches 4 rings. And you got to put them in the conversation when you talk about, teams and modern day dynasties. Like, they may not even be done. They are aging. Steph is 34. Dre and Clay are 32. Iguodala's probably not back after this. Like, this is probably it for him. They still have Wiggins. I think Wiggins might have 1 more year left on the deal. They got to find a way to pay him, to pay Poole if they're going to, keep this nucleus intact. And we'll see what happens. But then, you're going to get better efforts from teams like Denver, from Phoenix. You would hope the Lakers, since LeBron is still there and still relatively at the tail end of his prime. And so this team may not be done. But then you talk about someone like Steve Kerr, who now has 9 NBA championships as a player and a coach. And now you put him up there with Pat Riley. You put him up there with Phil Jackson, with some of the great coaches of all time, because the guy has been the puppet master, if you will, for lack of a better phrase. He's been the guy that's pulling the strings to help this team get over the top. Remember, they had Mark Jackson with, that same nucleus. Like, he believed in Draymond when people were like, why is he playing him so much? He said that he picked Steph and Clay over any duo, over anybody in the league. He picked his guys. And then he steps aside. Kirk comes in, immediately takes them to the championship, wins 3, wins another now. And people were saying, like, this year, this playoffs as well, might be the best coaching job that Steve Kerr has ever done, because he couldn't rely on just sheer talent to just beat teams. Like, he had to strategize. He had to really coach, because, if he didn't, like, the Celtics probably were going to beat up on them, probably going to maybe beat them for the championship. But he had to make some decisions. He had to really, like, pull some strings to get this thing to work out like it did, and kudos to him as well.
Yeah, Warriors, they're not even off the plane yet. Champagne's still flowing. Warriors fans like, can we just enjoy this for like 20 seconds here before you start comparing us to Jordan and the Bulls and all that? Fun season in the NBA, though, no matter how you look at it. Wolves fans watching Andrew Wiggins get the champagne bath at the end saying, why not us? Hopefully someday soon. Never too early to look at the 2023 NBA Finals odds. They're up. Golden State, your favorite at 5-1, followed by the Brooklyn Nets, Boston Celtics at 6-1, Clippers and Bucks at 7-1. Your Minnesota Timberwolves, want to take a guess, Reggie? Odds to win the NBA Finals in 2023?
I'm guessing it's not the highest.
225-1. I swear to God, I'm not making that up. 225-1. Come on, give me a 5
There's a chance.
Give me a 20.
There's a chance.
It's great value. It's great value, man.
There's a chance.
Yeah, no doubt. Wolves fans will for sure be keeping close tabs on that this offseason. NBA draft just right around the corner as well. Okay, coming up, we're bringing in our boy Brandon Warne to talk some Twins and their chances at winning a World Series ring. And later, it's Flashback Friday with a blast from the past. But first, our partners at BetOnline continue to be your number one source for all your betting needs. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports info, including this year's basketball finals, Major League Baseball, fights, and even NFL futures. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet Online, it's where the game starts. All right, well, let's talk about those Twins, shall we? And to do so, let's bring in one of our very own Locked On Minnesota alum, Brandon Warne, host of the Locked On Twins podcast. Check him and Nash Walker out up on YouTube after every single Twins game. He's on Twitter at Brandon_Warne. Brandon, we had your boy Nash on a few weeks ago when the Twins were red hot. A lot's changed since then, but the fact remains. Twins still in first place in the division. Guardians starting to nip at their heels. We're starting to see this team finally find their footing, it feels like. It took 2.5 months, but they're there, finally getting some big key names back again. Joe Ryan, Sonny Gray, after being just decimated by injuries. They take 2 of 3 from the Rays, 2 of 3 from the Mariners, Diamondbacks on deck. Then they got 8 of 11 with Cleveland. But I'm looking at some of the best teams in baseball right now. It's hard not to sit here and just say the Yankees aren't winning this whole thing. I mean, everybody's just playing for second place. That roster, when we got to sit down and watch them play the Twins, 1 through 9, just like Murderer's Row 2.0, they rank among the best in home runs, ERA, WHIP, run differential, etc., etc. Before we get into some Twins talkers, just how good do you think that team can be when they're like at their peak? And honestly, I mean, is anyone going to be able to stop those Yankees from running away with this thing?
I always feel like in the postseason, all that stuff kind of equalizes. It's amazing because you're facing the best of the best that each team has to offer. And so you're not going to see fourth starters. You're not going to see those relievers who give you 4 innings when the starter doesn't go long and all that. So I don't know, man. The October is, like I said, the great equalizer, but this Yankees team is absolutely stacked. And then all of a sudden, Aroldis Chapman goes down and Clay Holmes just comes in and is getting ground balls like it's going out of style, striking a few people out, and really just picking up where prime Aroldis left off. And yeah, I mean, New York right now, the two teams combined have almost 90 wins, and we're not even halfway through the season.
It's wild.
So, yeah, it's the two best teams on each side. So, the Dodgers will make some noise. The Twins could make some noise. Houston will make some noise. But New York is going to be the center of the baseball universe. And I'm sure they'd love to see another Subway Series like they had back in 2000, I think it was. Ooh. And so, yeah, it's a fun league right now, though, because you look at the AL especially, and outside of the Yankees, I think the Twins can keep up with everybody else. And who knows what happens in a short series, although the last 18 years, it's been Twins taking the L. In fact, I tweeted the other day, the Montreal Expos were still in existence the last time the Twins won a playoff game.
Oh, my gosh.
They were on the verge of moving to Washington, but they were still in existence.
Wow.
I have a question. And we talked about this yesterday on the podcast. Do you think the Twins have enough to sustain these wins?
Yeah, I do in the sense of offense. Pitching, that's another story. I think they have enough relievers they can work through and kind of find some guys. They've had some guys kind of pop up. They got some guys in the minors who are kind of interesting. I still think they may need to add one reliever, and any trade this deadline might be easier to add relievers than starters because starters are at such it's just an all-time low almost. Guys are getting hurt. Guys aren't pitching well. If you look at the top 20, 25 pitchers by WAR or whatever statistical measure that you want, those names would definitely surprise you. We're not in that era where you've got the Strasburgs and the Greinke's and the Kershaws all dominating. It's Kershaw who's doing pretty well, and then the other older guys are kind of falling off. There's some familiar names like Verlander and all that, but it's going to be hard to navigate finding a top-tier starter that the Twins are going to be comfortable giving up that many prospects for. Everybody loves Frankie Montas from Oakland. Cincinnati's got Tyler Mahle and Luis Castillo. But honestly, a lot of teams are not going to think of themselves as out of it because of the new setup with playoffs, too. So I think you can go get bullpen guys. They're usually not that expensive. But that small window of 2 months means they could have a couple bad outings and all of a sudden that whole stretch is shot. So I think the offense is good enough. The pitching is so-so, but they've stemmed the tide. They've managed to make it work. And the rest of the division is kind of shaky. The Guardians are pretty good. The White Sox are kind of finding their way, but then they take 2 steps back every now and then. I think the Twins can hang with this division. It's just a matter of if they do that, what happens in October.
And I think what's funny about that is like Rocco shows that he can have a quick hook with his starting pitchers. But then it's like, well, that would seem to believe that you have a lot of trust in that bullpen, which is shown that they can blow it a lot of different times. So I think to your point, yeah, it would be good if they went out and got 1 or 2 bullpen arms because, when in doubt, Rocco's just going to pull the starter and bring in some more pitching. But if he has a better bullpen, then maybe they can play better complementary baseball to kind of get them some more wins down the stretch as, the Guardians are nipping at the heels, as Luke said. And then, you never know how the White Sox may surge.
Yeah, and they're going to get a boost with Jorge Alcala hopefully coming back pretty soon because he's maybe not quite the raw stuff of Joan Duran, but high-octane arm. Griffin Jax has popped this year. Trevor. I say the wrong McGill brother every single time. The other one plays for the Mets. Trevor McGill has been kind of a revelation for them. So they're mixing and matching, finding some guys who throw hard. You got Joe Smith who throws soft but has a weird arm angle. They're piecing it together, and it's kind of a less is more from your rotation thing where you take out a guy before he's going to get shelled, and then you mix and match with your bullpen because you're only seeing these guys an inning at a time. And if you go Alcala throwing 97 and then Smith throwing 87 and then Duran throwing 102 and then you bring another lefty in like Thielbar, you're given all these different looks and it makes it hard for opposing managers to handle that. So it's a team that's just, to lack of a better term, some of its parts. And it's going to be a fun stretch that I think a lot of people didn't expect after how bad last year went.
Yeah, good point, too, with the new playoff setup, that teams may not be so prone to have the fire sale that we're used to and just start giving away all these key pieces. I'm just getting back into the MLB much more seriously, first time in a season or two, and I jump in, I see the top of the Twins lineup. You got the top tier, obviously. Buxton, stud. Luis Ariz, stud. Correa, stud. Then you get that second tier, pretty solid. Kepler, Polanco, Sanchez, Urshela. And then you hit this third tier, and this is where I need some help because it feels like the Twins have like 10 young guys on the rise they want to rotate in on any given night with those last 3 or 4 spots. Garlick, Celestino, Miranda, Jeffers, Larnach, Nick Gordon, Alex Kirilloff. That's like 7 guys. I'm probably missing 1 or 2. They're all relatively pretty young. I'm not an expert like you. Which 1 or 2 of these guys do you think like has the highest ceiling and would you like to see kind of turn into a staple in this lineup, say 2023, night in and night out? Like who's the best of the bunch just from a raw talent perspective in your opinion that gets you the most excited?
It's a balanced bunch, and I think that in some sports, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have 0 quarterbacks. If you have 2 really good point guards, you have 0 point guards. That's not the case here. if you have a guy struggling, you can supplement. You can mix and match based on lefty-righty, late in games, early in games, positional versatility, and all that. The guy for me that stands out is Alex Kirilloff. And for the longest time, Trevor Larnach and Alex Kirilloff were kind of interchangeable as the team's best outfield prospect. Larnach has taken a step forward this year defensively. He's in the middle of like a 1-for-22 funk. So his numbers don't look great right now. But as far as a polished hitter, he's 25. He hits the ball really hard to the opposite field. And again, defensively, he's really taken a step forward. But for me, Kirilloff is just like a hitting machine. And once they get that wrist healthy, which it kind of seems like is the case because he's been absolutely awesome, on fire at St. Paul, he's probably going to be the centerpiece of an offense that's putting the ball in play. He might not hit a ton of homers, but he could be good for 40 doubles a year. And play first base, play outfield. All their guys are kind of versatile, which helps too, because then you're mixing and matching with guys who can play, as opposed to maybe 8-9 years ago when it was minor league journeymen coming up. So Kirilloff is the guy for me, but Larnach isn't far behind because those might be your outfield. I don't want to call them cornerstones because Buxton is the cornerstone, but they'll each lock down a corner and be pretty dang solid. So yeah, AK is the one, and they got to get him up here pretty soon, man. He is absolutely killing it with the
yeah,
save.
just crushing. I heard Kirilloff, Larnach, future Hall of Fame players.
There
heard
you
it
go.
here first. Brandon Warne on Twitter at Brandon_Warne. All right, last one real quick. MLB drafts coming up here. I'm a total NFL draft nut. Lay it out for me. Is there any like Bryce Harpers, Manny Machados, like blue chip can't miss guys that we should circle right now and kind of put in the back of our mind? This guy should be a stud here in the next 3-4 years. Or who's the top talent or two? Twins picking at number 8 overall. Is there one guy specifically that you think maybe could fall right in their lap that talent would suggest could be a steal or just good value?
Well, you know how in baseball especially we like players whose parents played or dads played.
Yes.
And Drew Jones, who's Andrew Jones' son, is he's a dynamo. I think they project him to go like 2nd overall, though, so he won't be there for the Twins. Cam Collier is the guy I'm kind of locked in on at 8. And his old man played, I believe, in the big leagues. I'm trying to remember if it was Lou Collier. I can't remember for sure. But shortstop. And again, you look at the Twins, you're like, oh, man, Correa, Lewis, Austin Martin. I got all these shortstops. Everybody's a shortstop coming out unless they're left-handed. Yeah. Joe Nathan, Twins reliever, shortstop coming out. Kind of funny. Like Joe Mauer wasn't a shortstop just because he's a catcher. But if you're up the middle talent, you can move some guys around. Cam Collier, though, kid from Georgia, big arm. He does everything you want. I'm just curious, is he going to be there at 8? But that's the guy I'm really focused on. I love when they take high tool, high talent, high school guys, because those are the ones who become the superstars. College players, a little more polished, a little less ceiling. High school guys, man, it's shoot for the stars or completely miss. And that's kind of the beauty of the MLB draft compared to the NFL draft, which is your bread and butter.
Right. Yeah. All right. MLB draft right around the corner. I'm writing that name down. Collier at 8. You feel like, all right, pretty good value. Brandon Warne, ladies and gentlemen, just a fountain of knowledge. Check him out on Twitter at Brandon_Warne. And after every Twins game, up on YouTube with our good friend Nash Walker on the Locked On Twins postcast, all part of the Locked On Minnesota Network. Brandon, you're the man. We'll talk to you again real soon, all right?
Be good.
All right, thanks, brother. Brandon Warne, ladies and gentlemen. Reggie, any quick takeaways from Brandon right there?
I think he just, to pat ourselves on the back here, he was saying a lot of things that we kind of been echoing. So it was good to get, an informed baseball person just kind of say like they probably got to stand pat a little bit. But, whereas I was talking about them maybe going out and trying to get another starter, with as high of a price tag as that's going to cost and just unproven commodities all across the league, I think he made a great point talking about the bullpen, trying to get some arms for the bullpen on the cheap to help. And like I said, because Rocco has shown that, after 4 or 5 innings, he'll pull a guy and go straight to that bullpen. And so if he's got some rock solid arms in that pen, then maybe we feel a little bit better about him pulling a starter after 5 innings to preserve them because, the bullpen will do what they have to do.
Love what he said also about this just new postseason format. Again, teams might not be so quick to have the fire sale. Okay, the time has come. Gather around the campfire here, Reggie. It's our second edition of Flashback Friday and a blast from the past. And before I start, I got to preface where this came from. Remember last week we highlighted Magic Johnson after I was watching Luka in the playoffs. Got me thinking about NBA history, guys that changed the game forever. Well, this week we're talking about another guy who changed the game forever, and not just one sport, but all of sports. And he did it not on the field, but off of it. You ever just sit back here, Reggie, and look at these monster contracts guys are signing in free agency and say, wait a minute. How much? How did we get here? Patrick Mahomes, 10-year, $500 million deal in 2020. Steph Curry won the championship last night, 4 years, $215 million. Mike Trout, 12-year, $426 million. 12 years ago, in 2008, Alex Rodriguez signed a 10-year, $275 million deal. Absolutely unheard of at the time.
Yep.
But how did these types of contracts manifest? Where did it all begin? There had to be a time where this was not the norm in professional sports, and there was. In fact, there was a time before 1974 there was no free agency at all. It's wild to even think about, as the drama of modern free agency has kind of become as much a part of professional sports as the games themselves, but it wasn't always that way. Enter a man named Curt Flood. Flood was a center fielder for the Cardinals in the 1960s. He hit a career .290, three-time All-Star, won 3 pennants, 2 World Series, won the Gold Glove 7 consecutive seasons in a row.
Sheesh.
Rock solid career, although maybe not Hall of Fame worthy, but what he did off the field would go on to change the game of not just baseball, but the sports world entirely. At the end of the 69 season, Cardinals traded Curt Flood along with Tim McCarver, Brandon Brown, Joe Horner to the Phillies for Dick Allen, Jerry Johnson, and Cookie Rojas. But this trade turned out to be different from all other trades because this time Flood refused to go. So since the early days of professional baseball, a short clause was inserted into every major league contract. It basically gave the owners complete control over their players. Even when the player's yearly contract was up, the owners could just literally renew his contract, essentially binding him to the same franchise for life, allowing him to be paid whatever the owner felt he was worth or traded on a whim. So sounds kind of unfathomable now, but Curt was very much aware of what was going on in the world at the time, and he was very much aware of the fact that he did not have his civil rights. For the right to determine his own future as a ball player, Flood would have to sue Major League Baseball, cut to the core of America's pastime and how it operated. Curt's thinking was, hey, this is ridiculous. What's my specific worth? I mean, what am I really valued at? Like, what do I need to be paid if I'm putting up 7 consecutive Gold Gloves? I have a unique value to bring to the table, and I want to be paid for it. At that point, Curt kind of had to make a decision. He had to go all in. He knew his job and career as an all-star player in the league, it was going to be in jeopardy. I mean, he made a choice and chose to stand up and fight for what he believed in, that every player should at least get the opportunity to go seek out their true value and kind of maximize their time spent in the league. With the unprecedented backing of the newly formed Players Union, his case went all the way to the Supreme Court, but he could not beat the owners, and he lost that case 5 votes to 3. To demonstrate the unfairness of the existing system, though, Flood sat out the 1970 season, forfeited his income for the year, and by the time he joined the Washington Senators in 71, he was pretty much toast. I mean, that was it as far as his career goes. He was never really the same, and after that long, exhausting court battles, he eventually left baseball shortly after. His head's down, he's bumming, he's thinking, that's it, I lost. But the stage had been set. Curt Flood put shockwaves into motion, causing a stir among athletes. Now in all major sports, the seed had been planted. While Flood was out of baseball and out on his own, thinking the system had failed him once again in the courts, Flood's case had laid the legal groundwork for players to settle the issue at the negotiating table. And just 3 years later, in 1974, pitchers Andy Messerschmidt and Dave McNally won an arbitration case that found owners could no longer renew players' contracts in perpetuity, opening up free agency to all veteran major leaguers. The owner's power grip on the players was officially shattered. Free agency as we know it today was born and began to shift the balance across not just baseball, but all American professional sports. 3 months after Floyd had filed his lawsuit in 1970, Oscar Robertson and 13 other professional basketball players sued to abolish the reserve clause in the NBA following an earlier failed attempt by star Rick Barry. 6 years later, they reached a settlement to bring free agency to their sport. Flash forward to the present. After 4 years in Miami, look what LeBron's return did to Cleveland, showed how elite players could shape not only their own fate, but kind of the entire NBA ecosystem. The owners lost their monopoly, and now the players were finally calling the shots. You can't mention Curt Flood without mentioning his lawyer and founder of the Players Association, Marvin Miller. He was the pillar, he was the catalyst to getting his case all the way to the Supreme Court, sending that ripple effect throughout all of sports landscape that still obviously exists today. Flood paved the way for athletes to turn their talents into millions of dollars and build generational wealth, yet still to this day, for all Flood did to change the way sports paid their players, Curt Flood never garnered a single dime for his accomplishment. Marvin Miller, his lawyer, went on to be inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but for all he did, Flood still to this day is not. Reggie, what's up with that? Curt Flood, one of the greatest stories and legacies, who gave his life, he gave his professional career for his teammates and the players that would come after him, knowing he wouldn't see one single penny for all his accomplishments. A guy who many athletes and fans still have never heard of to this day. I say get him into the Hall of Fame next opportunity you get. And if not, at least spread the word of his story and remember the name Curt Flood and everything he did for the game of sports. Reggie, that's the story of Curt Flood and how he started free agency as we know it. And that is your blast from the past on Flashback Friday. What do you think about that? Curt Flood, man. I didn't know about that.
So it's really interesting because, you know, I grew up a Cardinals fan.
Okay, there you go.
And, you know, we would always hear the name Curt Flood, like in a lot of different conversations because of what he did. You know, you talk about some of the Cardinals greats, you put, you know, Bob Gibson there, Stan the Man, you know, New Age, you know, with me, you got, you know, Willie McGee, Ozzie Smith, Albert Pujols now, and, you know, Yadier Molina. You know, even back in the day, you know, it was Mark McGwire.
Yeah.
But, you know, what's interesting is they have to find a way to get this guy into Cooperstown, whether it's just like some type of like, you know, special courage award or so. Like they have to like get him into the Hall of Fame somehow, you know, like even if they feel like it's not like on his plane, which the stats are there and they show like he wasn't like this power hitter or anything, but the dude is as consistent as they come. I mean, 293 career hitter, like
rock
you got to
solid.
get this guy in, you
Rock
know,
solid,
and especially for what he did, like he goes down as like really a martyr, you know, for modern day sports. And it's funny because I was talking to one of my coworkers and he was just saying that he can't really stand the NBA because all the players he feels like are mercenaries. And I'm like, I can see where you're going with that, but like, I think it's deeper than that. I think it's more nuanced than that because here are these elite athletes who know they only have a certain amount of time to maximize their value. And if they aren't getting it where they are, that's why, you know, they talk about like, you know, people taking a hometown discount and all that stuff. I'm never for athletes doing that. Like, look, if they want to, you know, take less because they want to win and they want to win championships and they feel like, you know, their current situation helps them better win championships, then fine. But also, because of free agency, like everybody gets a piece of the pie. So like you see it where they went to, you know, we'll talk even going back this far, earlier in the decades, KG leaving, going to be with Paul Pierce, and then Ray Allen going over as well, and they formed the Big Three, and really kind of started that whole thing in the NBA where, you know, players were cool with just going and teaming up and doing their thing.
Good point.
And it's just funny because like, yeah, you might look at them as mercenaries, but like then when another player who's looking to get paid goes and follows another person who left to go get paid, and now you have two or three of NBA's top superstars on one team. Now you're talking about a championship. You know, the Warriors just last night won championship number 4. Well, 2 of those happened because Kevin Durant made the decision that, you know, he just didn't feel like he could win anymore in Oklahoma City. He felt like he reached the ceiling. So he did what he felt like was great for him and got paid, went to Golden State, won 2 rings there in 3 years. You know, then he goes and teams up with Kyrie in Brooklyn, and they're chasing a ring. You know, LeBron leaves, goes to Los Angeles. Then Anthony Davis gets recruited there. And then last year, Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, you know, all these names are coming and doing that. Like, we don't see all this movement, all this, you know, you mentioned Mike Trout. I just read an article last night talking about Shohei Ohtani possibly getting a 4-year, $200+ million deal, highest average of any player in modern day sports history. And this is all made possible because, you know, I always like to say this phrase, you know, Curt Flood, he walked so others could run. And it sucks that he wasn't able to reap the pure benefits of it financially for himself. But at the same time, now all of a sudden, all these players are, you know, getting paid, getting their just due for their value in that short amount of time, especially like you look at the NFL, man, you get one hit, your career could be over with.
Toast.
And so like, and the fact that they don't have, you know, fully guaranteed contracts in the NFL.
Right.
I understand on both sides of that coin because football is so high impact and it could be so limited.
Barbaric.
You know, you don't want to put money into a player where you don't know their availability from year to year. And so you don't want to guarantee that. But on the player side, they're like, look, well, I'm putting my body on the line. I'm putting my body at risk. Like, if something happens to my life, to my career where I can't play anymore, like, I want the guarantee of that money being there regardless of what happens to me because I play such a barbaric sport. And so I think there needs to be a conversation, you know, had around that as well. When you look at guys like Kirk Cousins signing fully guaranteed deals, like that is very smart. And at his position, you know, that's a risk that teams are willing to take, but maybe not for a running back or a wide receiver or a linebacker because, you know, they're a little bit more high impact than maybe a quarterback would be on a snap-to-snap basis. And so, you know, kudos to Curt Flood for doing what was necessary. You hate that it seems like he kind of fell on the sword for it to happen, but martyr for this game, he walked so that everybody else in sports moving forward could run.
Well said. Great feedback there. I love that you brought up KG. He was the one who started that whole trend too, going over to Boston, winning those finals, building that superstar kind of team. And neither of us were around for this either, but before Target Field, before the Metrodome, it was the old Met, located literally right where the Mall of America now stands today. Built and owned by Calvin Griffin, who owned and started the Twins baseball team as we know it today. He started the Twins in 1961, but like a lot of these owners, once free agency started, once Curt Flood put that in motion, these guys still tried to penny pinch and they tried colluding behind closed doors. You know, they're going, hey, nobody throw out any crazy deals or offers. So, you know, we can all save some money. But it wasn't long until these owners ran out of money. And like Griffin, he had to sell the team in 1984 to Carl Pohlad, who owns the team today. A lot of these owners, though, were forced to sell their teams because they just didn't have the capital and money to stay competitive with what they had to pay these players anymore. And again, Curt Flood never made a single penny off any of that. Sports-altering movements and accomplishments, unbelievable. He's not in the Hall of Fame. What are we doing? Hey, let us know what you think. We want to hear from you. Hit us up in the YouTube comments or on Twitter at LockedOnMinnesota. Did you know who Curt Flood was? Did you know his story, how free agency started? What do you think about free agency now and some of the crazy money these superstars are making? A wild story, I'll admit, I knew little about until doing some research, but something I just needed to share on Flashback Friday and take a blast from the past. All right, looking forward to hearing all the feedback from you guys. We're back here Monday breaking down more Twins, Vikings, plenty more. Remember to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Join us every day for another episode covering all the biggest topics in Minnesota sports. He's Reggie Wilson. Follow him on Twitter at Reggie Wilson TV and on KARE11. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Tune in Monday to Superior Sports Talk, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. For Reggie, I'm Luke. Until Monday.
Be blessed. Spread love this weekend.
This is Superior Sports Talk with Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota.